Welcome back, everybody, to Week 8 of the IHSA podcast here on Prep Baseball Illinois. I'm Joe Sullivan, alongside the rest of the crew, Diego Solares, Peter Hammett, Gavin Smith, and Drew Nicasio for Week 10 in the start of the playoffs here in Illinois. It's that time of year, and super exciting stuff here that we'll have ahead. But how's everybody doing? How are we doing, guys?
Good. What's going on, Joe?
What's up,
How are
Joe?
you?
What's up, Joe? What's up?
Good, man. I'm doing great. It's good to be back, and it's that time of year. There's nothing better than some playoff baseball in May. So let's get into it real quick. Taking a look at the Power 25, obviously had a few things shake up at our number 1 and 2 spot. We have Naz and JCA. Nothing switched there. Those two teams actually faced off against each other on Saturday for the ESCC championship. Naz took that one. That's their second win against Joliet Catholic on the year, but we keep Joliet Catholic at number 2. And for New Trier, 24-3, they are continuing to be maybe the hottest team in Illinois right now.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. They've won 21 in a row, Joe. So they are the new number 3. They're playing some of the best baseball in the state right now. The JCA thing, leaving them at number 2. I mean, JCA has 3 losses on the year, and 2 of them have come to Nazareth, the number 1 team in the state. We've seen JCA a bunch. We really like their club. We've also seen New Trier. It was a discussion point in the rankings call, this week on what to do there at the number 2 slot. And for now, we gave JCA the nod, but New Trier is knocking at the door. Clearly nobody's touching Naz as of right now. They've yet to lose. They've got a ton of good wins under their belt. They just captured the ESCC, championship. So they're holding steady at number 1. But yeah, New Trier is a team to take note of. And Joe, looking outside of New Trier, 2 teams that are moving up now inside the top 5 in the Power 25 are 2 CCL Blue teams, St. Lawrence and Providence Catholic. St. Lawrence was previously at number 6. They jumped 2 spots to number 4. They are 26-5. They went 2-0 on the week. And then right behind them at number 5 is Providence Catholic, who's up 5 spots from number 10. Providence Catholic had a 4-0 week. They are now 24-6. Both St. Lawrence and Providence Catholic put together 11-3 conference records this spring. And from what we can tell, they're going to be considered the CCL Blue regular season champions, which is a little, we need to get some clarification on it because St. Lawrence did win both games against Providence Catholic during the regular season, and I'm not exactly sure if that is a tiebreaker or if they just go with the overall, 11-3 record. But 2 of the best teams in that conference, they're both climbing up towards the top of our list, top of our board, and 2 teams to be reckoned with here as we get towards the postseason. Another team moving up the list was Downers Grove North. They had a 3-game set against Lions last week, and they swept them. So they're up 3 spots to number 10. Another big team, another big jump, at least that a team's making, is Marist. They're 22-3, and they're now at number 15 in the state. They're quite the story in my mind. I'm just kind of checking my notes here and looking back to what their record was throughout the season. On March 17th, they were 2-2. So since March 17th, we're talking 2 months now, they're 20-1 in their last 21 games. We bumped them into the rankings last week for the first time at number 18, and they climbed 3 spots to number 15 this week. So that is a team, like New Trier, like some of these other teams that are making pushes in the Power 25. They are just about as hot as anybody. And right behind them at number 16 is a new team in the rankings here, Lincoln Way Central. Jumping in for the first time since it looks like mid-April here we had them in. But they're up to number 16. They had a 3-0 week. They are 19-6 on the year, and all 3 of their wins last week were against Power 25 squads. They took 2 off of Lincoln Way West, who was number 3 at the time, and then they also knocked off Minooka, who's a really good squad, who's coming in at number 17 this week. Minooka's 20-10. Those are some big noteworthy teams there, but there's 2 other coming from the same conference. Up in the Northwest, you got the Fox Valley Conference, and 2 of our other newcomers this week are from that league. At number 19 is McHenry. They are 24-7, and we had put them in the Power 25 a couple weeks back, and then they proceeded to have a tough week and get bounced out. But here they are, playing some good baseball again, and we've gotten to see them live and in person, and we like their roster. We like the arms that they have with Brandon Shannon, Caden Wozniewski, Elbrecht. They've got three, quality arms there leading the team, and they're 24-7. Coming in at 19 after a 4-0 week, and right behind them is Burlington Central. Burlington Central is now number 21 in the state, and this is their first time all season jumping in the Power 25. But we've been keeping tabs on them. They are actually currently right now in the second place in that conference as far as conference wins and losses. They went 3-1 last week with 3 Power 25 wins. They knocked off Hampshire 4-1, and Hampshire was number 21 at the time. And then they also took 2 games from Huntley, which was a huge statement in my mind. Huntley was number 5 at the time, and they swept a 2-game set against them. So they've earned their way into the rankings. They're at number 21. They're 19-9. Going through the list, there are a lot of teams to sift through, and 19-9 is kind of right there in the mix of these records that we're looking at. There's some teams that have better records, maybe not as good a competition that they've faced. Some teams with worse records and maybe a little bit better competition, but we felt Burlington Central was that squad that deserved it, and they play in a really good league up there in the Fox Valley Conference. And then the last team to jump in, the final newcomer, was Stevenson, who we were high on in the preseason, and they started off the year a little rough, but they are back playing good baseball. Went 3-0 last week. They're 22-8, and we like a lot of the pieces they have as well. So that's a little bit of me rambling on the Power 25 here. I don't know if anybody else has any nuggets they want to touch on with that, but I know there's a lot of stuff we want to get to with this week's podcast.
One more week left of regular season play for the 3A, 4A, but today is a special day as the regional quarterfinals will start for 1A and 2A. Taking a look at the 1A sectionals, obviously there's a lot of hidden gems kind of all across the board as far as prospects go, but definitely some dominant teams. Who are some guys that we're looking forward to seeing compete in the 1 and 2A, and also some teams that we should keep an eye on for this playoff run?
I got to start off here, Diggs. As a former 1A high school kid myself, every spring, it doesn't matter if there's a 1 seed or a 5 seed, they have a chance to win and go far. And last year, I'm from Henry, and last year the Mallards made a run to state. They got second in state, and they probably weren't a team that many people would expect to make it that far, but they did. So the 1A is a tough one to look through because there's so many different teams that maybe they might pull out a win. Maybe they've got one arm that just kind of takes them all the way to state, and you just never know. But for me, I always look at this first Harvest Christian sectional. They're at the top here on the IHSA website. They're typically, from my experience, that sectional, that Chicago area suburb sectional, has a lot of the typically schools that will make it to state. At least one of those schools will make it to state out of that sectional. And this year for me, Ottawa Marquette, they're talented every year. They've got third place in 2022. And then in 2021, they were in 2A and they made it to the super sectional. And then 2019, they were state champs for 1A in 2019. But they've got Alec Novotny, Sam Mitre, 2 really good players for them. Mitre is going to just hit a lot of bombs for them and just kind of be that power threat in the middle of the order. And then Novotny is just an athletic kid, plays shortstop, good player, and he's also really good on the mound too. But they're 24-2 this year, and Coach Hopkins at Marquette just does a really good job with them. They always find ways to win. They play tough competition throughout the regular season. I know they had JCA on their schedule. They didn't end up playing because it got canceled because of weather, but they always play really talented teams up there, and I think they're going to be one for me to kind of watch for in that 1A just playoff as a whole.
Kind of looking through the rest of that, Gavin, here. It's a really good sectional. It is. There are honestly multiple teams that are deserving, probably, of making a run to state. You look at another one of the 1 seeds. You got St. Edward's, which is in Elgin. Not the best record. They play in a conference that is mostly made up of larger schools. Joe DeSalle and Jack Causey leading the way there. two left-handed pitchers on the mound. Both of those guys are 60-plus strikeout guys. They both hit 7 homers apiece. They're both hitting near the 500 mark, right at the top of that lineup. To me, the heavy hitter, you kind of touched on Ottawa Marquette, Harvest Christian, 15-10. Again, not the flashiest record. Very similar to Gibal Catholic last year, who won the 1A state title. I think they entered the playoffs with they were either a game above 500, 2 games above 500, pretty close to that. That's kind of a testament to the schedule that they play. Harvest is very similar, but if you look at their record and the run totals that they have put up against other 1A schools this year, it's very drastic. I've seen them play. To me, it's a college roster. They're very physical. The top 4 guys in their lineup are all college baseball players. They're the last 5, 6, 7 guys on that roster will also play college baseball. Ben Mitchell going to Bellarmine. He's a big physical kid, man. We've seen him a bunch. Was at the Illinois State games last year. Took one of the latter rounds of BP. Also pitches for them. Is mid to upper 80s with a pretty good slider. Gavin Duran, John Wood Community College, left-handed hitter, one of Drew Locascio's favorite players. Can flat out swing it. He'll play short for them. Left-handed bat. Hayden Mosley is a physical right-handed bat going to Morton Community College. Plays first base. Saw him hit a homer this spring. He'll pitch it for them too. Caden Meeker starts in center field and is their number 1 arm on the mound. He's got double-digit stolen bases. I think it's 20-plus this year, hitting close to 500, will run around center field. We've seen him up to 88, I believe, in the past, still uncommitted, 2024. And then Obed Lopez, who's kind of a pop-up arm, he's a 2025. He's coming to the state games, mid to upper 80s, can really spin a breaking ball, fills up the strike zone. Kyle Zeeble is a 2026 left-handed bat that will start at third base for them, hits in the 6 hole. Also a pretty good football player, can swipe a couple bags. Like, they're pretty good. They're well coached. They do a good job there. That's the team to watch for me in this sectional.
And Dees, I actually want to add one more thing about them. They beat Stevenson at the beginning of the year, who we just now have, in the Power 25 again. And I don't think that's a knock on Stevenson at all, just because, like you said, this Harvest Christian team is really, really talented for a 1A program. And like you said, they play a lot of tough competition throughout.
Yeah, they're going to get a tough draw in the first game of the playoff next Wednesday, 7 p.m. They're going to face Hinckley Big Rock. They'll draw Martin Ledbetter on the mound, who is a highly physical 2025 that we've heard things about. We haven't seen him in game. I'm actually going to be there, so it'll kind of be our first in-game look at him. But what we've heard and just kind of what we've seen on socials is a physical right-handed bat that's got some juice on both sides of the ball. So that'll be a great test for him going up against that Harvest Christian lineup. And then the winner of that game will play the winner of Aurora Christian and Westminster Christian. And really, Aurora Christian, that's a program that has a lot of history behind them. They were the 2018 1A state champions. A lot of good stuff has come out of that program. They win a bunch. So, like, you kind of break down the sectional, like Ottawa Marquette is always good. St. Ed's has 2 really good left-handed pitchers. Harvest Christian's always good. Aurora Christian's really good all the time. Hinckley Big Rock's got a power arm. Like, it's going to be a battle, whoever comes out of this. And I would be shocked if one of these teams isn't playing at state, let alone for the state title once that time comes around.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there.
And then kind of moving down, Gav, like, looking at this Father McGivney sectional, we've talked about Father McGivney on this podcast before. At one point last year, they were 2A. They finished the year 37-2. Their season ended in the Super Sectional at the hands of Dominic Vagley and the Columbia Eagles, who we'll touch on later in the podcast. They're 1A now. They dropped down 30-4 on the year. I would have to think they are the best team in 1A, if not one of the best teams in 1A. They're out of Glen Carbon, which is right in that Edwardsville pocket. A lot of good players on that team. Cannon Camp and Drew Kleinheider, one of the better up-the-middle duos in the state. You got Isaac Wendler at first base. Justin Terhar plays third base for them. He's a physical right-handed hitter. The thing for them, for me, will be what do they have on the mound? Last year, they had Gabe Smith, who's at Ole Miss right now, in terms of pure power. Right now, their pitching staff is kind of a compilation of a bunch of competitive, strike-throwing, low 80s righties that can spin a breaking ball. Who's going to separate themselves from that pack will kind of, for me, be how far this team goes. But They'll challenge themselves. Like this year, they've played Belleville West, they played Rochester, which is a 4A school. They've played O'Fallon. Like they're not afraid. And kind of looking at the rest of their sectional here, Valmeyer, who is a team about 40 minutes south of where Father McGivney is. I got to look at them a couple weeks ago. They have one of the more talented 2026 arms in the state in Luke Blackwell, upper 80s arm that can spin a breaking ball. The body's right. We touched on him on what I believe was last week's podcast. They're the 1 seed in their part of this. It's kind of looking like them and Father McGivney will meet in the sectional semifinal on a collision course, which will be an awesome game. Because if Luke Blackwell's on the mound, those guys have a chance to really get after it. Catching for them is Chase Snyder, who's a 26 we touched on last week. He's sure-handed behind the plate, can control the run game a little bit. It's always good to have that cushion behind the dish when you have a pretty good arm on the mound. And you got Landon Roy at shortstop. He was an uncommitted 25 that kind of caught my eye. Good body, hits leadoff for them, moves around the infield well. And Troy Neff, who's a freshman, hits in the cleanup spot. I saw him go 4 for 5. He'll play on the infield for them. So there's some talent on that Valmeyer team. And that could be a really awesome game in that sectional semi, them against Father McGivney, matching up to see who will play for the sectional title.
Kind of looking down here, too, like you got in the Mendon Unity sectional, you've got Delavan, Illini Bluffs, Route Catholic, Monmouth United. I mean, those, Delavan, Illini Bluffs, and Monmouth United have some really talented arms. And, I mean, Route Catholic does, too. You got Delavan has Cole Norrell, who's going to John A. Logan. Illini Bluffs has Josh Vaughn, who's going to Bradley, and he just threw a 21 strikeout perfect game. Tanner Rogers, we saw him this winter at our Peoria showcase, and he was like a mid-80s guy from the left side. There's some good arms in that sectional who, if they match up in a regional championship in a sectional semifinal game, like these guys and these teams can kind of lead their team through, maybe a couple what would look like an upset based on the seed.
And looking at Route Catholic, like we talked earlier about pitching wins in the playoffs. They got Brady Turner, who's a left-handed pitcher, 2026. The body's right. He can really spin a breaking ball. It's got that kind of high arcing depth to it. Strike thrower. Conrad Charpentier is a senior left-handed pitcher for them going to Lincoln Land. He was at our state games last year. Another high pitchability, kind of a funkier guy, throws from right here, can mix it up, give a tough look. And transferring in for them is this year Eli Olson, who's a super intriguing 2025 with a really good body. Like those 3 guys on the mound at 1A can get them through that sectional alone, in my opinion. They've won a bunch of games this year. They'll challenge themselves too. They're well coached. They're always good. Last year, they went to a super sectional and lost. So I would definitely keep an eye on Route Catholic as a team to watch to make their way to Peoria.
Yeah, and kind of looking at Arcola too. You've got, obviously Tanner Thomas, Louisville commit. We saw him at the state games this past summer, and again, same thing. You got an arm like that, a power arm like that in 1A baseball. Like it's going to be tough for some of these teams that would have to match up with him, especially if it's a win or go home game like these playoff games are. And looking at Bloomington sectional, kind of the same thing. Like I gotta give love to the Mallards here. Just Lance Keysweater, he's another guy like that. He's on the mound. They got second state last year. Again, I'm not saying that they haven't had a very successful year, but if Lance matches up in a game with some of these teams, like it might be tough for the opposing team. And same thing, Luke Gallett from Dwight, Alan Spencer from St. B, just a couple other good arms in that sectional to kind of watch for.
And like kind of just to put a bow on this year, the Goreville sectional, they went to state last year, 1A. That's a team that's had a ton of success over the past couple of years, making their way to Joliet. They're the 2 seed in their regional. Waltonville, Cesar Valier, it's a co-op. They got Brandon Menser, who's one of the more talented, uncommitted 25s on the mound. He'll swing it for them too. Upper 80s, can really spin a breaking ball. So those are 2 teams to watch down there, man. There's some talent scattered throughout here in this 1A sectional. The Harvest Christian one really catches my eye, but it'll be interesting to see how these playoffs kind of play out.
Yeah, I actually, moving to the Farina South Central sectional, Altamont was kind of a team that stood out to me. They got Nathan Stumpke leading that offense. He's hitting 394. They're hitting 293 as a team, which is pretty solid. But the thing that stood out to me was they have a team ERA of 1.98. They've punched out 271 and just over 200 innings. And they got kind of a 3-headed monster over there. So plenty of depth to get them through the playoffs. They got senior Ethan Robbins, who's got 31 innings, 4-0 record. He's got a 1.1 ERA. Dylan Elam, it's another senior, 37 innings, 7-0 record. So I'm sure they feel good anytime he takes the mound. 1.3 ERA, and then they got Cade Millville, who's a sophomore, also plays some varsity basketball for him. 39 innings, he's got a 3-1 record and a 2.2 ERA. So that is a good luxury to have with three arms like that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them make it pretty far.
So a lot to look forward to, obviously, with the start of the playoffs happening today with the quarterfinal in regionals for 1A as well as 2A, which we will now move into. 2A, obviously, a lot to look forward to. And we touched on a good chunk of 2A teams last week in our episode. Normal U High and St. Joseph-Ogden, two of those. And, with 2A, obviously, we saw Joliet Catholic win back-to-back state championships. They move up to 3A, so it kind of opens the doors for a lot of teams. And for this Decatur sectional, there's a lot of good talent, and it's going to be a tough one for all of those squads.
Yeah, this looking at this Decatur sectional, it in my opinion is absolutely loaded with 2A talent, and the players, the prospects in this sectional is really impressive, and it'll be really fun to watch this closely and kind of see who comes out on top in this sectional. Because I mean, you look at it, you got St. Joseph-Ogden, and they've got Luke Landris, he's going to Illinois, Logan Rosenthal, Braxton Waller, who actually broke the single season RBI record for St. Joseph-Ogden this year. He's got over 50 RBIs now, and he's actually getting close to cracking the top 20 in the state for the RBI record, which is really impressive for Waller there. That's a big season for him. And then kind of moving down, looking at Normal U High, they're another very talented team. They have arms, they have bats. They got Charlie Veracruz, who's going to Notre Dame. Max Heinemann's a really talented 2026 catcher. Max Willie is a really talented outfielder who's been doing really well for them. He's hitting in the 4-hole. Connor McMillan is another really talented outfielder for them. He's batting second. And then they got Will Paxton going to Oakland on the mound, Gavin Swartz going to Indiana on the mound, and then Devin Tupper going to Eastern Illinois on the mound. So a really talented roster for Normal U High. And then Monticello, another team that we've had ranked throughout almost the entire spring in the Power 25. They've got really good arms in Luke Teschke and Ike Young. Luke Teschke's going to ISU and was a Super 60 kid this past winter. Ike Young is another name that kind of we've known Ike Young for probably 8 months now since last fall, but this spring we've seen him up to 90. Really quick arms, so I mean that's a really good 1-2 punch there for Monticello. And then their lineup 1 through 9 is pretty solid. They got Coy Williams, Jacob Long, Eli Kraft, and then Matthew Swartz. So they're really talented. They've kind of struggled a little bit as of late, but they're still a team that I think could absolutely do some damage here in 2A. And then Tremont is kind of the sleeper for me in this sectional. They have a really talented roster. They haven't really seemed to put it together record-wise this spring, but I mean they've got a guy, Blaine Williams going to Illinois, who's a really talented catcher behind the plate. He's got a really strong arm, and then Griffin Meeker and Brady Booth are just a couple other guys that are talented and we've seen before on that team.
Yeah, moving down here, just looking at this Pleasant Plains sectional, you got Piazza Southwestern. They're having a great year, actually. They are 26-6. They got 3 guys getting it done on the mound. Marcus Payne, 59 innings pitched for them. He's only given up 7 earned runs all year with 61 punch-outs. Colin Lamar is a 2024 going to Swick that we saw. We've seen him a few times. He went to the state games the first year we had it. We saw him last year at the Southern Illinois fall tournament that we had. He's got a 2.51 ERA and 39 innings pitched with 57 strikeouts. And then Adam Hale, 42 and 2/3 innings of work. 1.97 ERA. They're the 1 seed in their side of the regional. You've got Pleasant Plains, who's having a good year. They're a team that's always pretty competitive. I believe, Gab, correct me if I'm wrong, they just beat St. Joseph-Ogden this week. You had Gillespie, who made it to the Super Sectional Championship game last year. They did graduate a handful of key players, including Cameron Link, who's at Johnson County Community College right now, but they're 20-8. Saw them earlier in the year. They do have some good pieces. They got Luke Schuckenbrock picking it up the middle for them. Bryce Hansman plays first base. He swings a good bat. Carson Hailstone at third base. Bryce Booz on the mound, who's a power arm. He's going to Lincoln Land Community College. I saw him up to 90 this spring with a pretty good breaking ball. So that should be a pretty competitive sectional too. But kind of touching on what you said, man, this Decatur one looks like it's going to be a battle for whoever gets out of there.
And actually, I gotta look down here too. I mean, Newman Central Catholic, they've got Brendan Tunick, and then they've got talented 2025s and 2026s too. And they got fourth place last year in 1A. They moved up to 2A this year, but they're kind of a team to just watch out for. They've got some talent in their lineup. And actually a big shout out to Wilmington too, down here in the Beecher sectional. They've only lost one game this year, which was to Joliet West, who's really talented this year. And that loss was 8-5. It wasn't like it was a close game. So kind of watching out for them. And they have Zach Oland, who's a 2026. He's hitting 429 this year with 8 jacks, 8 doubles, 42 RBIs, and 26 runs scored. Kind of looking through the Chillicothe sectional, you got Sherrard there, who has Aiden Terranez, and we have not personally seen them, or at least I have not personally seen him, but we've heard reports that he's a mid-80s left-handed arm who, again, back to the arms in the playoffs. Like, he could be one that really leads them and takes them far in the playoffs this year. And, Eureka and Brimfield and Illini West are all in that sectional as well, who are all really talented teams, have some, good records, and Eureka's been really talented. They were good last year too. But yeah, just a lot of good teams here in 2A. I mean, Deegs, I know you've seen Teutopolis lately, and they've got.
I'm actually going to touch on this Benton sectional first here. Harrisburg is one of the top seeds. They're 28-5. I was pretty high on them before the season started. They basically bring back their entire team from last year, from a 31-win team last year that lost in their sectional championship game to Ziegler-Royalton. And a really good arm in Trey Cole, who's at McKendree now. They're senior heavy. They have a lot of guys on that team that are going to play college baseball at the next level. Obviously, their coach, Jay Thompson, does a great job. So he's one of the winningest coaches in IHSA history. Nashville is another team in that sectional that's always good. They're the 2 seed. They're having a good year. You got Carterville that has a couple of good arms in Brady Phillips and Parker Poole. DuQuoin is having a fantastic year. They won their conference. They got Cycraft leading the way there as a freshman that's getting it done on both sides of the ball for them. Briefly touched on Ziegler-Royalton, but they're a team that's always competitive. And then moving down to this Greenville sectional, Gav, kind of how you talked about. Teutopolis, just saw them take down Edwardsville. They have 2 talented sophomores, Austin Voorhees and Gavin Addis, that will throw the ball well for them. Columbia, back-to-back 2A state finals appearances. They'll be without Dominic Vagley this year. He's getting it done at KU as probably the Big 12 freshman of the year. But they do have Brady Matthews and Lucas Riebling. Matthews is he's a left-handed pitcher going to Jeffco in Missouri. Mid-80s arm that can really pitch, really good changeup, spins a breaking ball, fills up the strike zone. Lucas Riebling is kind of the same way. He's right-handed. He's swinging the bat for them too. I believe he has 5 or 6 home runs on the year. Brody Landgraf, a 2026 for them, was kind of dealing with some nagging injuries early on in the year. It seems like he's back healthy. He was a staple in the middle of their lineup last year as a sophomore, as a freshman. We saw him perform pretty good at the state finals last year. So that's a team to watch as always. And then Effingham St. Anthony, the Bulldogs, have seen them twice now this year. They just took Father McGivney into extra innings and lost in one of the crazier games I've seen in my time doing this. But that's a team that's always good. They were 1A last year. They bumped up to 2A now. And then one more team to watch is Althoff Catholic. Hank Gomrick, Bo Gomrick, Matthew Hesse, getting the job done for them. They actually have a win this year over Father McGivney. They're in the same conference. So those 2 sectionals should be pretty interesting to see how they pan out.
So with 2A playoffs starting today and the road down to Peoria at the end of May coming upon us, a lot to look forward to with these squads, and we'll keep you updated on Prep Baseball Illinois for the road to the state championship on June 1st down at Dozier Park. But we'll take a look and transition into our game recaps from last week.
Took in a Southwestern Conference matchup between Collinsville and O'Fallon. Ethan Bagwell, 2024 Mizzou signee, took the mound for the K-Hoaks in a 3-0 win. David Barker, another senior Arkansas State signee, opposed him for O'Fallon. One of the quicker games I've been to, it was a tried and true pitcher's duel. Bagwell dominated in front of 16. 15 to 20 pro scouts, 6 innings pitched, 1 hit, 2 walks, 12 punch outs. He was 94, 95 exclusively in the first inning, kind of settled into that low 90s as the game went on, living up in the zone. He kind of throws, it's the same fastball, but 2 variations of it in a way. He'll backspin it up in the strike zone, and it's really good. It's got like life and real carry and high spin, and then he kind of gets around it at times for some cut to that glove side. He was getting all kinds of uncomfortable swings and misses on that fastball. He was really jumping on those O'Fallon hitters. And then his slider, when it's right, man, it is a power pitch. 78 to 81 with real tight lateral spin on it. Was kind of backing up on him a little bit at times in this look, but when it was good, it was really, really good. It looked like a true pro swing and miss pitch. So that was the best look I've gotten at him. I've probably seen him since his sophomore year 7 or 8 times, and it was pretty impressive. He's a big physical kid getting it done there for the K-Hawks. And I want to give some love to David Barker, who was kind of on the losing end of that game, but he threw the ball really well, man. Complete game, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 10 punch outs. That's a guy that's really come on down the stretch here for O'Fallon. Early on in his high school career, it was kind of a really long, lanky-limbed. He's probably 6'4", 170 pounds, and just kind of had some struggles syncing up those long levers, as most guys do when they're that tall and lean at those younger ages. But he's been really good for O'Fallon this year. I absolutely love the way the ball comes out of his arm. It is electric arm speed. It's super loose and easy. He throws from right here, kind of that 3/4 slot, gets all kinds of run and sink on that fastball. He was basically exclusively 90 miles an hour in the first inning. First 3, 88, 90, kind of settled into that 86 to 88 range. But it's a tough out, man. I could see that guy coming out of the pen for Arkansas State when he's a sophomore or junior, being 92, 94, touching 95 easy, and being a really uncomfortable at-bat for right-handed hitters as that ball kind of dives in on their hands. He's shown me a decent changeup, throws it from the same slot. We'll get kind of that natural rollover to it. The big thing for him will be just kind of increasing the velocity on his breaking ball. Right now, it's about 68 to 71 miles an hour. It's got tight spin with good depth. He's going to have to throw that thing harder to get college hitters out, but there's a lot of ingredients there for David Barker to be a guy that really pops at Arkansas State and is a pro guy afterwards. Not a whole lot of action offensively, both sides of the ball. Chris Alcorn hit a double for Collinsville to drive in 2 runs in the top of the 3rd inning. They scored their only other run of the game the next inning on an error. They had 3 hits. O'Fallon had 2 hits. Each team had an error. It was a real pitcher's duel. It was really good to take in at Blazer Field for that Southwestern Conference battle against 2 teams that actually, once the playoffs start, may have a chance of meeting up in the regional title game. So that's what I got, Joe.
Thanks, Deeks. And then transitioning back over to 2A, we saw a really good matchup last week in a lot of good arms and bats from both sides, who were 2 teams that were in the Power 25 at the time with St. Joseph-Ogden and Monticello, 2 teams that will maybe potentially match up in that Decatur sectional that we talked about earlier on the episode. And Gavin, you got a really good look at both of those squads.
Yeah, so this is my, I believe, 3rd game this spring seeing Monticello, 2nd seeing St. Joseph-Ogden, but really good look at Luke Teschke. He's just a really athletic kid. He's going to Illinois State, first off. He's Illinois State signee. And he's a really talented arm. He's athletic mover, really quick arm. He was up to 92. He threw 6 innings and struck out 7. His breaking ball was really good. And he's also throwing a sharp slider now, which I don't believe he was throwing last year when I saw him. I know that at the Super 60, he was throwing that. So he's he's a 4-pitch guy now. I didn't see a changeup out of him that day, but I know he's a 4-pitch guy now. But a really good look at Teschke. And then Eli Kraft is one that I've seen. He kind of popped for us, or I guess emerged as someone to follow last year when I went and saw Monticello. He's a really good frame on him. He's a strong, athletic catcher. And he really good receiving actions behind the plate. Moves really well. He's athletic, agile defender. And he had a really good hit at the plate. He's a right-handed hitter. So he's kind of a 2025 to continue to follow, and he's uncommitted. And then looking at Coy Williams, he's a 2nd baseman for them, and he's a 2026. And one thing about Monticello that's been really impressive this year is they just kind of have guys that are continuing to pop up that are like that fluid, left-handed, pretty swing. And Coy Williams is another one of those guys that has shown well this year for me. And he just has that, easy, fluid swing. There's not a lot of effort in it. It's pretty controlled. And he hits in the 3-hole for them. And he finished the day 2 for 5 with a double and 4 RBIs. And he's a pretty good defender up the middle, too. He's an athletic kid, like a lot of these Monticello kids. And then looking at SJO, they have Luke Landers. He pitched for them. I know he's pitching for them. He's probably not a pitching prospect as much. He's more of an infielder catcher, and he's a really good hitter. I saw him take a good swing, and I think it was the 7th inning. Just really direct, athletic to the ball, and it's a quick path through the zone too. And he's just a really talented defender as well. And then they have Logan Rosenthal, who's a left-handed bat for them. Athletic kid again. I mean, both of these schools, it's athletic kids. And I know we've talked about them both a lot. They're just both really talented athletic programs that will continue to produce really good talent on the baseball field, football field, basketball court, wherever it's at.
And Gavin, I think what makes those two teams unique for 2A squads, and just hearing you talk, and when we go through the Power 25 and try to figure out, where to slot these teams, are a lot of those 1A, 2A teams, they'll have some good players. They'll have some noteworthy prospects, but, it may be 1 through 5 in their order and not 1 through 9. And what I think Monticello and St. Joseph-Ogden does really well is they have complete lineups. There's not a whole lot of just, easy outs in there, which is why, they're highly regarded in our minds. And there's obviously a lot of guys to know from those teams as well, just listening to Gavin talk. So thanks, Gavin.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. That's what is really impressive about them for sure, is that they're 1 through 9. They have guys that can compete at the plate. And obviously SJL was going up against an arm that was throwing upper 80s, low 90s. And they were taking competitive at bats. They didn't act like they were scared. They didn't act like it was something they hadn't seen before. And that's not a knock on Teschke, because he's still a really talented arm and he's just facing a really good lineup. But I actually got to see on Saturday kind of a preview of what it's going to be like. It was over at Dozer Park. So the 1A, 2A state playoffs is at Dozer Park in Peoria. So I kind of got a little preview, a little snippet of what it's going to be like here come June. But I got to see Normal West and Glenwood, who are 3A programs here in Central Illinois. Good look at a couple arms for both these teams. Obviously, Cam Appenzeller through. It's dominant. He's a really, really, really talented arm. It's super easy. There's minimal effort in his delivery. He's got a really clean arm action, and it's out of a low 3/4 slot, so it's kind of a funky delivery or funky arm action that it's coming out of, so it's hard to pick up on. He creates a lot of run on his fastball and movement on his curveball. What I thought, obviously the fastball was 88 to 91, and that's impressive. But what I thought was most impressive to me was, one, the way that he moves and how easy it is, but two, the ability to throw a strike with his curveball. He was locating it on the outside corner to a right-handed hitter for just a looking strike, but then he would show the ability to come inside for a backdoor curveball, and it was just swing and miss right at that back foot. And it was super hard for that Normal West lineup to compete with him because he was changing it up. There's so much movement on those pitches. So he's a really, really talented left-handed pitcher in that 2025 class, and he is committed to South Carolina. But I really like Appenzeller. That's the second look that I've seen at him this spring. But then looking at Normal West, they had Chase Reinhardt start for them. He's a freshman. And I've personally not seen him. I know that our staff has heard quite a bit about him, especially this spring, and he's doing really well. And I was talking to their coach before the game, and he's getting starts quite a bit this spring for them. But he's definitely a follow in that freshman class for us. He's an athletic body, still looks just like a baby, still trying to fill out that frame, wiry frame, not a ton of weight on him, and there's a lot of room for growth and strength with him. It was a low 80s fastball with arm side run, and then he mixed in a breaking ball at 71 to 72 with like 1-7 shape, and he could really throw it for strikes actually. The one thing about him is and I think it's, he's a young guy, a young pitcher, he's still learning, but there were times in the third inning where he'd slow that curveball down, and it was almost like he was trying to throw it for a strike, but then he would bring it back up to 70, 71 towards the middle of his outing, and it would just be a really sharp, swing and miss type pitch. So it was really impressive look at him. And he's kind of one that is going to continue to learn how to pitch and kind of develop as he gets older. And I mean, a freshman, just a really talented freshman there for Chase Reinhardt.
Just seems like a lot of clay to work with there, Gavin. Like he's, the frame is the way you'd want it as a freshman. Longer limbs, like plenty of weight to come and muscle to come down the road with more development. And I really like the way the arm action is. It's compact, it's uninterrupted. It's not long and loose. It's more short and compact, but he gets that fastball out front. And then the feel for the breaking ball and the strikes, and he seems like he's a repeatable, clean mover. And we have been hearing his name a lot, and I'm glad you're able to get out there to see him because I think there's plenty more to come with him, and a good one to have for Normal West over there and Coach Hawkins.
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive too as a freshman going in there, pitching at a minor league stadium, probably having some nerves with that, and then pitching against a really talented Glenwood team, and having to face a guy like Cam Appenzeller. Like as a freshman coming into a varsity game, that's probably a pretty daunting task, but he did it, and good for him. Shout out to Chase Reinhardt for sure.
Heading back north up to the Chicago area, Pete, you got to see a good one in Oak Park, River Forest, and Fenwick, which kind of looked like a chippy and heated game.
Yeah, no, that was it was definitely a playoff atmosphere. I mean, that was a crosstown rivalry kind of grudge match type of game over at Triton. Night game, so big student sections from both sides. Yeah, there was a lot of energy for sure. But no, I saw my guy, Coach Campbell from OPRF, and then head coach Kyle from Fenwick. Two great coaches. I know Campbell he used to coach me back in the day, and it was my first time ever meeting Kyle at Fenwick, and he's an awesome guy.
I don't know how to say his last name, so I don't want to butcher it, but I think it's Kamichik. I think it is Coach Kamichik.
I was avoiding that.
Is how I would go with it. But just so he gets his love because he deserves it, and what he's done over there with Fenwick has been pretty impressive. But keep going.
No, absolutely. I mean, they made it to state, or no, what was it, Super Sectional last year? Sorry. I mean, we got them at number 20 this year, but OPRF took them down 8-2. I mean, OPRF is just one of the more. I mean, I feel like I say this a lot with potent offenses, but they got a really potent lineup. Ethan Moore, Timmy Lurk, Brady Green, Johnny Nelson, and Mason Phillips, of course, too. So that's just a great core that they have there. Ethan Moore, I mean, he's a switch hitting shortstop. He's a hitter's guy. So if anyone knows their history with hitters and RJ up there, they'll know that he pumps out infielders like it's his job. So that's just another good one coming from out of that program. Supernatural defender. I mean, he can move both ways easily. He has some timing through the ball. It's just supernatural. Like, the guy just looks like a stud out there too. He's jacked. His legs are popping out of his pants. And he can swing it from both sides too. And then Lurk and Green, I mean, those are two juniors going to NIU that can swing it. And then Johnny Nelson, it was my first time seeing him in game. Coach Campbell really likes him a lot. He says he's a gamer. And I agree. I mean, he was taking some great at-bats. He was all over the barrel, playing a good third base in the game, too. And then they went to Luke Gotti. He started for them. He's a senior. He's not playing in college. He's just going to Clemson for school, but he could play if he wanted to. I mean, he's low 80s, fired a complete game. I really liked. He's competitive, too. Like, I really liked the way he competed. That atmosphere, and to get it done like that was pretty big time against a ranked team. And then, it was at Triton, so I actually got to see them both take BP. So it was great for me to see Fenwick like that because we're not super familiar with their guys. So there was a couple guys that stood out to me throughout BP and in game as well. Ryan Lazewski, who we liked in the winter. He's an athletic left-handed hitter, uncommitted senior. And Ian McKinnon, a senior, easy loose swing. It stays in the zone. He's another one that I liked. And then Josh Wicker, compact and easy swing, just using the whole field again. I mean, they got a lot of athletes just throughout that lineup it's depth. And then they also got Josh Morgan playing center field for them. He's a freshman, high-level football player, too. I know he's got at least one Power 5 offer. So they just got athletes all around there. It's no wonder that they've been successful over the last couple of years. And then they started Michael Sosna, who's kind of been their ace on the mound, I believe, for the past year or two. I mean, I'm sure he'd be the first to tell you he didn't have his best stuff that day, but he was up to 87. There's definitely some clay to work with there. Um, and then I also got to see St. Charles North versus Lake Park. So Power 25 matchup. St. Charles North is 11, Lake Park's 9. Lake Park took that one 5-1. Ryan Colucci, he stood out to me. Really good defender at second base. He's confident both on the infield and in the box. He's got a quick, direct path. He was all over the barrel too. He scored most of their runs in that game. He's just a competitive, tough out every single time. And then Derek Ittner, natural. He's a natural defender as well. Scrappy little hitter. Bunted for a single. So, he's just kind of that spark plug towards the top of that lineup. And they started Lewis Slade going to Swick, senior. He was low 80s, and he was working with 3 pitches for strikes. Gave up a run in the first inning, but then really calmed down after that, filled up the zone, like I said. And he actually was popping 86 in the 6th inning, which was, he was working like 80, 83 early, and then he was ramping up as he went deeper in the game. So that was kind of cool to see. And then for St. Charles North, Keaton Reinke, sophomore, he got the start. He only gave up 1 earned run on the day. I know the score, they lost 5-1. So, but it was they were definitely taking advantage of some throwing errors and some mistakes. So it was not Keto's fault, but he was up to 89, working upper 80s. Breaking ball was around 75 to 77. It started off kind of like a little loopy. He was didn't really trust it. And then as the game went on, he really gained confidence in it, and he was ripping off some really good ones. Jackson Spring, shortstop, he looks the part, looks great in the uniform. Good for him to build off of too. And then I really liked him at shortstop, and then he was just all over the barrel. Had a couple knocks on the day, and then Michael Bono, really good catcher, really looks the part. Good catch. He can receive really well. Good catch and throw. He can put it right on the bag. And then he didn't get any hits on the day, but he looks the part in there too. So just another guy that I like.
Peter, I wanted to jump in here because you saw a great matchup in St. Charles North and Lake Park. 2 teams that we had been itching to see all year. Finally got to see them both against each other. Really good matchup. But the Keaton Reinke comes to our preseason All-State underclass this winter. And to me, was one of the more intriguing prospects at the event. First off, just walking around in the uniform and in the PBR shirt, he stood out. It was impossible not to notice him. It's a great looking frame with so much more to come in that frame. But what I liked hearing you say was, gave up 1 run maybe on him. The rest might have been on the team. And that's what we want to see. You don't want to see a team play a sloppy game, but it's going to test Reinke. And we don't just want to see him on when everything's working. He's got his A+ stuff. Nobody tests him. You're going to learn so much more about that player, that prospect, when they are not getting picked up by their teammates. He's a sophomore too. So not only, let alone how a senior handles that, but somebody that's a sophomore who's maybe not getting helped out, how they handle that, their mannerisms on the mound, how they keep attacking the zone. And those are all the things that, to me, separate guys. Because there's other players in this state, sophomores, that have the type of arm talent that Keaton Reinke has, but it's those little separators, how you compete in a game, how you handle failure, how you pitch in big situations, how you pitch in bad weather. All that stuff, helps create the prospect and what we're looking at here. So I just wanted to touch on that because I'm sure you picked up some things on Reinke and his compete factor and his body language and things like that while watching him. So.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I really loved the fact that the breaking ball wasn't what he wanted early on, right? And usually you'll see kids oh, I don't have it today, I'm just not going to throw that anymore. He kept throwing it until he found it, and then he found it, and it was arguably his best pitch of the day. That's just something that you love to see. A lot of kids would just shy away from it and not throw anymore, and then just lay in fastballs, and then you get pounded and you're out of the game. But no, he competed, he figured it out. So yeah. He's got a lot of good
especially
stuff going on.
like who knows who's calling those pitches. And if it's on the catcher and Keaton to call the game, then kudos to them to keep going to it. But then if it's also on the coach, like kudos to him for knowing his pitcher and
Yeah.
knowing like, hey, I think he's going to find this. I know it's a pitch he needs. Like, let's keep calling it. So just really good to hear all around.
Good to have Tyler Duffenbaugh on the pod this week again. Obviously, Ty, one of our top Chicago area voices in Faces and Scouts. Ty, we talked a little bit last week about Lincoln Way West and Lincoln Way Central. Obviously, a little bit of rivalry there. Lincoln Way Central, a big week for them. They took 2 games from West. West obviously dropped one against Providence on Saturday. They were 1-3 this past week. We talked about Luke Mensick last week and how great he's been. A lot to look forward for both of these squads as we head into the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Saw the first of those 2 wins on Monday this last week at Lincoln Way Central. It was a packed house. The atmosphere, it felt like a sectional final game. Lincoln Way. First off, just got to give my props to the Lincoln Way Central student section. They had to have 60 plus students there at the game, which, I mean, it's high school baseball. Depending on the school, you'll see that. A lot of the time you won't. So I want to give them props there, and they brought the energy the entire game. And just overall, like when I got to the field, Central was still taking BP, waiting for West to get there, and man, everybody on that team just looked dialed in. Not that I necessarily thought it was foreshadowing of what was about to happen, but man, those kids looked absolutely dialed in. Even the, reserve guys that maybe don't play a whole lot, even their BP was locked in, dialed. But man, it starts with Luke Menzick. So Central won 6-1, right? But man, Luke Menzick, just an absolute competitor. I've seen him throw twice now. Saw him pitch against York earlier in the year against Ryan Sloan, and he was impressive in his own right there. This time he's facing off against Connor Essenberg, and he matches or best whoever he's starting against when I've seen him. He was juiced up in the first inning, was running his fastball 90-91. It's kind of got like a little bit of 2-seam life to it, like towards the end. And his bread and butter is a breaking ball. I felt like in this outing he was showing 2 different shapes to it. Like he had more of an 11-5 when he wanted to kind of get it over in the zone, and then he could go to like a 10-4 short, late darting slider when he really wanted a righty to chase out of the zone. Pounded the zone, threw 65% strikes in the game, and he plays like second base for him from time to time when he's not pitching, and you kind of see that with how his arm works. It's shorter, it's athletic, it's quick. He's going to Xavier. He's a Xavier commit. He's a junior. But I don't know what more I can say about Luke Menzick. He's really made a big fan out of me just in the 2 times that I've watched him throw. And then Landon Menzick, who plays third base for the Knights, really looks the part defensively and in the box. He plays third base, makes everything just look routine. He moves with ease to his left and his right. Was just making everything look easy. And he has some easy juice from the right side as well. He hit a double in the game, and he also stole a base. Like, the kid just kind of plays with a different energy about him, and it's not like a cockiness or anything. It's just kind of this quiet swagger about him and everything he does, which is obviously fun to watch every time out. Connor Essenberg got the start for West. Listen, like, results-wise, it probably wasn't his best day. I still thought the stuff was really good. He was 90-93 in the first couple innings, actually. He was still running up to 91 later in the game when he really needed it. He didn't get the best of defense at times, but I thought he hung in there, for the most part, and he kept trying to fill up the zone. But sometimes you're just not going to have your best stuff, and that's baseball. But it's nothing really to hang your head about if you're Connor Essenberg. I mean, the stuff was still really good. It's a left-handed arm, sits in the low 90s. Ton to like there.
Yeah, and to just piggyback off you, Tyler, like out of a lot of the guys we've seen this spring, he's one of the biggest risers towards like the top of the class, I would say, in that junior class. And not that he wasn't before, he's always been a highly ranked prospect, but he's really proved it from both sides of the ball this spring, and we've been able to see him a bunch. So junior going to Kansas State. But yeah, keep going there, Tyler.
No, yeah, just to touch on that, like he even did it with the bat again. He was only 1 for 3, but in his first at bat, like I said, Menzik came out throwing hard to start the game, and Essenberg hung in on a hanging breaking ball, sent it out to left on a hard line drive for a single in his first at bat. But even later on in the game, he still takes a pretty professional ABs. He's a hard out. He fights off pitches. He doesn't chase a whole bunch, which sometimes kids with power like that, you would understand if they chase a little bit. But I thought he handled himself in the box really well that game as well.
I think that's a great point. Is his approach? It tells you he has feel to hit, because he does have a ton of power. But every time I see him hit, his mindset is up the middle of the field. You could tell he's trying to go gap to gap. When I saw him at Lamont, he homered to dead center field. And it allows him to sit back and see pitches deeper and read the breaking ball and be able to hit everything. So just a tip of the cap to him, because there are not many high school players with that kind of power that can dial it in and have a professional approach. So sorry to keep butting in there, Tyler, but no, he's a good one, and he does it on both sides of the ball.
The last guy I want to touch on in this game is Colin Mowry. Really set the tone in the bottom of the first inning for the Knights. Essenberg's coming in, throwing low 90s. Mowry shoots one the other way for a double in the right center gap to play 2 runs for the Knights, and really set the tone for the game. Place was jumping at that point. He's a strong kid. He's known for his catching, but I was impressed. He was playing first base in this game. Just seemed to have like a natural feel for the position. Just with how he moves, some of the flexibility he was showing. He's going to Louisville. Really looks the part. Looks like a Louisville kid to me the 2 times I've seen him. So that's what I got from that game.
What do you have on this Marist and Nazareth game? Because I know Marist went over to Nazareth, number 1 team in the state, and there was a reason, at least, picking games that day on a player for Marist that we really wanted to see. And left-handed pitcher Aiden Flynn had been all over the box scores all spring. We've been hearing really good things. Coach Sefcik had been speaking very highly of him, so we finally got our eyes on him.
Yeah, super impressed with Aiden Flynn. So that was Friday. Nazareth came back to win that one 6-4. Marist was giving Nazareth everything they could handle. It's an ESCC semifinal game at that point, and Aiden Flynn came out. The stat line's not going to do that kid justice. I think his final tally was 10 hits in 5 innings or so, but man, that kid was filling his zone. He had 77% strikes. He's every bit of 6'6". I'd even believe it if you told me he was 6'7". It's a tough angle. Like, I feel like he gets really good extension on his fastball because it's so late. Like, it's 88 to 90, but it feels like it doesn't really come out until it's crossing the plate. It was getting on hitters quick. Nazareth, credit to them. They're the number 1 team in the state, and they've got a bunch of dudes up and down that lineup. They got theirs, every once in a while. So Flynn would also toss in like a sweeping breaker. He had the ability to, front door guys with it, or back door guys. I mean, throw it over on the outside corner to righties, but also come in and hit them on the, with a back foot type breaker too. So
that's
lot
kind
to
of
like
what
there.
That's kind of what Gavin was talking about with Appenzeller. Just the ability. It's one thing as a high school pitcher to be able to throw a breaking ball for a strike or throw it down in the dirt. But a guy that can manipulate it to both sides of the plate, which is arm side, glove side, that to me is a separator. It shows advanced feel. for someone their age, and that's something that typically takes some time to develop. How to tighten up a breaking ball to get it to show in the zone and break out of the zone, or make it look like it's not a strike and end up in the zone. So those are all just the little pieces here, and that's why it's so important to watch these guys pitch in a game, and see what they do. And the Aiden Flynn one was super interesting to me, Tyler, just because he is that 6'7", 6'6" lefty, and he was an early commit. Before his velo popped. Illinois took, in my opinion, took him and projected on him, dreamed on him on what he could become. And it seems like he's just now you kind of getting to that point that we thought he'd get to. And he still has plenty of time. He's only a junior. So it does make it hard for us, though, too, is like just with what we do, we're always trying to find uncommitted players to, hopefully shine a brighter light on them to get seen by college coaches. And when a guy like Aiden commits early, there's really not a ton that we need to see him for, outside of just making sure we rank him properly, that he's getting to maybe some national events that he needs to get to. But when we've been hearing his velocity had jumped up and we hadn't seen him in a while, like this was a must see for me. And so just pumped that you got the look that we had kind of been hearing. And he's certainly, as a result, will need to skyrocket up our Illinois rankings. We're talking about a 6'6" lefty with a breaking ball who throws 77% strikes, I think what you said. That's touching 90, that still has more to come. I mean, good for Aiden Flynn. That's what it's all about. He's clearly putting in the work, or maybe just, God's finally hit him and he's, hitting that maturity level and puberty at this age and coming into his own. But good arm there from Marist, and great stuff, Tyler. So yeah, keep going, because I'm sure there's more nuggets from that game.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head with Aiden Flynn. But again, the stat line isn't going to do him justice, but thought he threw the ball really well. Moving over to Naz, Andrew Corse is a guy that really jumped off the page for me just in this game. He DH'd. He's a right-handed bat. 3 for 3 on the day. He was seeing Flynn really well. What's so interesting about Andrew Corse is, like, if you go to his, player profile page on our website from, I think it was the state games last year or 2 summers ago, looks like a totally different kid now. He's really grown into his body. He's definitely, you can see he's put a lot of work in the weight room. He's built like a linebacker in football. And it shows up in his game. He hits the ball really hard. He's got a fast, hard swing. So that's, another guy that we'll just keep following down the line. But I was super impressed. And then Landon told me, you can tell his dad was a Hall of Famer, honestly. Like, when you watch him play, especially in the box, it's just different. It's different for a sophomore. His approach, to me, just seems like a guy who's it's kind of like a college approach, really. Like, just to give you an example, there was an at-bat against Flynn late in the game. First pitch, borderline strike on the outside, on the outer half. A lot of kids would have, hung their head and been down. He was just like, okay, whatever. He resets. He later hit a double in the at-bat to bring in a couple runs for Naz and give them the lead in a big spot. And that's pretty much the same thing I saw earlier this spring when I saw him against Jacob Gimbel, Lucas Grant, 2 tough left-handed arms from Joliet Catholic. And as a left-handed hitter at this age, if you can hit lefties really well, you're going to go far. You're going to go far because you see it all the time in big league games. Platooning's such a big thing anymore. So as a left-handed hitter, if you can set yourself apart and face those tough left-handed matchups with ease, he's going to go a long way. So probably not a huge surprise. Obviously, his dad, Jim, did okay for himself in the bigs, but just super impressed with Landon Tomey.
No, that's awesome to hear from afar. He's been a guy we've liked a lot for a long time with the bat for all of those reasons, but he stays inside the baseball and he uses the opposite field so well, and to me that's why he can handle those lefties. He doesn't have to try to jump or cheat or go too quick. He's able to see the ball deep, and his hands and his path work the right way, and it allows him to cover the whole plate. But I don't know this Carter Pass, Tyler. I see you got to see Carter Pass, and that's a name I'm unfamiliar with. What do you have on him?
So played first base for Marist. He's a junior, big-bodied kid. What's interesting about him is, in the best way possible, the kid looks like he's never, picked up a razor. Like, he's got kind of that really young look about him. Like, there's probably still maturity and development still to come there. Really handled the bat well from the left side. Was facing a tough arm in David Cox, his first at-bat. Shoots a single the other way. Just seemed like his approach was like not to do too much with the ball. Just, hey, where it's pitched, I'm going to keep this really simple. It's a simple swing. But I really liked it. He also is another guy that he handles the bag really well at first base too. So just to me, he was, coming into the game, someone I wasn't familiar with either. And leaving the game, it's like, okay, hey, we're going to follow this kid more.
Perfect. And that's what it's all about. Like, that's what I love is you go to a game for a reason. We go to a game, whether it's a great matchup or, a pitcher we need to see or a position guy we need to see. And there's always another nugget that you can take away from the game that you didn't, know about before. And typically it is that, that one player for somebody that it's like, oh man, all right, he's a follow.
Yeah, great stuff. And Nazareth, again, 31-0, taking the ESCC championship this past Saturday, a big win over Joliet Catholic, and they continue to roll as we head into the final week for 4A and 3A regular season. Like we mentioned, big day for playoffs for 1A and 2A. We'll keep you all updated here on Prep Baseball Illinois. So for Gavin Smith, Peter Hammett, Drew Locasio, and Tyler Neffenbaugh, I'm Joseph-Ogden, and so long, and we'll see you next week.